Welcome to Farming for Health, where Farmer Lee Jones and I talk with leaders in food, farming, and health and wellness to spread knowledge and inspire a plant forward future, starting now. Welcome to the Farming for Health podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Sapola, and I'm so pleased to have Dr. Anna Yusim here with me today. Thank you so much for being with me.
Dr. Amy, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I can't wait to talk with you about your book, Fulfilled. And first, I just wanted to ask you about the journey to writing the book and what brought you to that point.
Absolutely. So thank you. Um, for me, I've been a spiritual person, but starting about 20 years ago. Had anyone prior to that told me I'd be spiritual, I would have laughed. It was the furthest thing from my mind, the furthest thing from my heart. I was very scientific, very rational, a lot like my father. And I went to Stanford to become a mathematician, didn't go in that direction, became pre-med, went to medical school, was going along to be a psychiatrist. And then certain strange things started to happen in my life that I couldn't quite explain or understand scientifically, such as had gone to a lecture and was sitting in an ice cream shop afterwards, and a woman with a child comes up to me and says to me, I have some messages for you. Can I give you some messages? And I was like, I have no idea who this woman is or what her messages are for me, but why not? Okay, sure. She looks innocuous enough with her young child. And so this woman sits down and starts like telling me all these truths about my life that nobody else knows, all these secrets that, not secrets, but like things that certainly were not on the web and I don't share with many people, including the name of a guy that I had a really big crush on. She's like, you met this person. His name is, and I was like, who is this person and how does she know all this stuff? And this person who ended up sitting there still remains now, many years later, about 15 years later, a very important part of my life and ends up like being a soul sister of mine. But it was that there was somebody out there who somehow, without the natural channels of communication, was able to receive all this information about me. And this just boggled my scientific mind. And I was like, what in the world is that? And what does that say about the nature of the world, the nature of our mind, the nature of how we communicate with each other? And that really started me down this spiritual path. So I started studying many different spiritual traditions. This was, by the way, just one of the through lines. The other through line was it was a difficult time in my life, and I was also searching. I'd had a heartbreak then, and also I was really trying to figure out if indeed psychiatry was what I wanted to do longer term. So there was a lot of confusion and soul searching. So those experiences, like that experience, and several others like that, and then soul searching and pain were what catapulted me into this idea that perhaps healing can progress in other ways than just the way that I was being taught in medical school. And perhaps I want to study what those are and I want to learn from other cultures and traditions. And so that was kind of what started me on this journey.
Oh, amazing. And I read that you went to over 70 different countries and you really explored a lot of different spiritual paths. Can you speak to that a little bit and kind of what you found in that searching?
Definitely. Like for me, travel always has been a way of taking a step back for myself and seeing the world anew. It's always been a way of whenever things aren't going right, number one, an escape, but number two, a way of redefining my connection or identity around whatever pains me to be able to have a little bit more space and therefore this newfound awareness. So, whenever things have been difficult, I would go backpacking, or I would take a trip, or I would go on a silent meditation retreat and just be able to write and journal and think. Um, and that's really what so many of these trips have been. And in the course of that, a lot of the trips also were spiritual to understand different ways that other cultures see healing and think of the soul. And the soul is a particular interest of mine because having gone to Stanford, Yale, you don't really talk about the soul and healing. You talk about healing the mind, healing the body. You don't really talk about healing the soul or spirit, nor is there even an agreed upon definition of it. So I started traveling the world and started asking, what is the soul? How do we heal the soul? Because ultimately, I was going to be a psychiatrist. I was supposed to be a healer of the soul. And I'm not even being taught about the soul. So my favorite definition of the soul came from a Mexican shaman that I worked with named Fernando Broca. And he said that the soul is made up of two parts. First is the part that connects us to everybody and everything. And they sometimes say we're one unified soul. So it's that part. And then the other part of the soul is your uniqueness and the way in which you can make a difference in the world through your unique set of talents, skills, abilities, interests. So it's these two things, your interconnectedness and your uniqueness, which comprise our soul. And all different cultures have different understandings of soul and different methods for how to heal the soul.
Oh, that's such a beautiful definition. And working in kind of the traditional medical system, how do you bring that understanding of the soul into practice?
Yeah, it's such a great question because traditional Western medicine, like I said, doesn't really acknowledge much of a soul. And so after I wrote my book, Fulfilled, a lot of people started seeking me out who were looking for more of a spiritual component to their psychiatric treatment. And so this kind of became my brand or my thing, right? The science of spirituality or merging mental health and spirituality. And this is what I am seeking to do. And the way that I do it is like with patients, is to really understand people at the deepest level on what is people's connection or spirituality. What is their connection to spirit? And it can be so many different things. For some people, it's their religion, and their religion is their spirituality. And by the way, let's go back for a second and let's define spirituality. What's spirituality, right? So I think of it as a connection to something greater than oneself, which for some people can be God. For other people, it could be Mother Nature. For people, who are deeply connected to nature, nature is their God. And they feel most spiritual or most connected to something greater when they are hiking, farming, eating like organic, amazing food with vital vegetables. And like this is their connection to spirit. And it's so beautiful and so profound. And it's as profound as somebody, in the way that I understand it, going to church and through a church service, if ritual is the way that people connect to spirit, connecting to that. And there's so many different ways for people to have that experiential component of a spiritual connection. And so that's what I see spirituality as. And I help my patients to understand what role has spirituality played in their life? How have they connected to spirit? And if they want more of it, what steps can they take now to welcome and open the door for more of that in their lives?
Oh, I love that. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about your book, too. As I read through it, you really do start to notice everything around you is essentially a spiritual experience, right? Everything around you is soul and connection. And I think it's just a beautiful way to start looking at the world and interacting with the world when you have that sort of appreciation. For the connection and interconnectedness. And we see that here on the farm too, like you talked about with the vibrant vegetables and kind of just being in tune with nature and like the changing seasons and all of the energy, like especially right now is spring, right? Like the vibrancy of spring and the rebirth and like growing of all of these plants coming back just helps you, at least helps me kind of feel like in harmony with what's around me. A note from our sponsor.
The Chef's Garden is a family-owned regenerative farm that grows the most flavorful and nutritious vegetables, herbs, and microgreens for culinary professionals and home cooks. For over 30 years, the Chef's Garden has supplied some of the world's finest chefs and restaurants. Now, through Farmer Jones Farm, the same delicious ingredients are available to home cooks in the United States to use and enjoy, delivered directly to their homes. The Chef's Garden mission is to grow exceptional vegetables, care for each other and the land, and inspire a vegetable-forward future. For more information, visit chefs-garden.com.
I think that is so beautiful. And I feel like that's exactly it. It makes me think of a quote that people attribute to Einstein. We're not sure if he said this or not, but this idea that you can see the world of one of two ways, either nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. And it's sort of this idea that the sacred is around you at all times. And it's just about our opening our eyes and allowing ourselves to witness it and to start to live a life where that is part of our everyday. And that there's something so beautiful about that.
Yes, and in your book, you had a quote that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience; we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah,
And I really love that. Can you speak more into why that distinction is important?
Absolutely. It's exactly what you and I are talking about, because if this whole life is just a little blip on the screen, we're able to put things into perspective. And first of all, we realize how sacred life is, and that it is, like, on one hand, yes, this is all there is. It's today, and we have to take life, and make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do, live like every day is your last, all of these wonderful things to be able to milk the sacredness of life out of it. That's like an active way. The more passive way, is just to be able to receive all of the sacredness of life and be open to the way in which it manifests. And on the other hand, if we're human beings that have temporary spiritual experiences, which I think is probably how most people would see their lives, then the three-dimensional world is all there is. And that death is where things end. And that, our connection to spirit is something that once in a blue moon, if we're lucky, we can tap into, as opposed to seeing our life as this divinely intricate, orchestrated way of actually spirit playing out in all aspects of our lives. And that we have a way of connecting to something greater that can guide, help, transform, and heal us if we're able to open up those channels. So it's like a whole different paradigm shift. It's a really beautiful way to think that all of this, everything we see, is actually part of a life plan and a spiritual reality that is bigger than us.
That's beautiful. So, another thing you talk about in your book is flow state. And I think I hear a lot of it, like a lot of talk about it, especially kind of in the health community, is like how important it is to get into flow state. But can you describe kind of why it's important and then how do we get there?
Yeah, I love that. And I love the flow state. I think it's such an amazing thing. Like, flow is when you forget what you are doing and you're doing it because you're so present and you're so in the moment, and you feel so in line with your purpose and mission at that moment in time. And it could be anything. It could be eating a delicious meal that you've just cooked with these amazing, with amazing food that you've grown in your garden. You can be so in flow with that. You can be so in flow in a creative state, either writing or painting or writing an opera, orchestra, or so in flow together with a friend. And it's like the rest of the world falls away. Flow is really a state of presence, like the ultimate state of presence. And, when you think about flow, there's certain things, if you think about, because often the way that it's written about is in terms of creativity, is what you're putting out into the world. And that this is like a mission driven, very purposeful, creative act that is at once in line with a greater good for you, but also challenging and interesting. It's hard to be in flow when you're really bored. So it's something that needs to be compelling, that draws you forward, that you're 100% enraptured by, and that expands you. So those are often the components of flow. And how do we get into it? I think it's about finding the right activities, the right people, the right places, the right circumstances that allow for that. And part of the right circumstances is being able to remove what is the wrong circumstance. And the wrong circumstance, what keeps us from being in flow, is incessant thoughts, is rumination, is an inability to be present because we are too worried, too obsessed, too thinking about the next moment, too thinking about the past, to anything that keeps us from being able to surrender to the present moment. And which essentially is a very human thing. We've all been there. To be in flow is like a gift almost. It's like a state of grace. But you have to, and some people are just naturally given that. They're just in flow. Surgeon doing a surgery, they are so in flow. There's a lot of us who want to be in flow. There's like this maybe 25% of our brain that's like a little bit somewhere else, worrying about the next thing, thinking about the phone call earlier, thinking about the podcast we're going to be on later, da 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 da, right? And so it's like you work with that part of yourself to quiet it, and then you do everything you can to learn to be more in presence. And you quiet that by meditation, by awareness, by exercise, by doing whatever you need to do to bring yourself in harmony with yourself.
Oh, yes. I love flow, and it's something that I know personally I don't get there enough because my mind is going a lot, even though I sit in meditation and all the things. But I feel like it's a very like vibrant state where you have so much energy, and it's almost like recharging your batteries to be in flow. So when we think about creativity and like left brain, right brain, why is like that balance important and kind of coming out of flow state into like the left brain, right brain? why is that important? And also, when we think about nature, how does this relate to like our left brain, right brain kind of time dominance?
I love it. So, okay, so first, the left brain, right brain. There is research now coming out of different institutions that's, challenging this dichotomy, the left brain, right brain. So we won't necessarily talk about where these states of being that we're discussing are located in the brain, because I think it's a little bit more multifaceted than left and right. But we'll talk about these different states of being. Nevertheless, one being the much more deliberate thinking, like planning, orchestration, executive function state, the other one being the state of grace and being open to intuition, being open to receiving to what comes through you, right? And how do we balance those? And one being, like you said, very time focused, time pressured, hurry up and get this done. Boom, 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 orchestration. The other one being this timeless reality of like a state of grace in many ways, like a spiritual connection, a connection to your own divine self. And I feel like, when we talk about spirituality, for many people, that spiritual experience, whether that's reached through prayer, meditation, ritual, psychedelics, or a spontaneous experience, people have, states like that. That state of flow is this beautiful divine thing that takes them outside of time and enables them to receive from the deepest part of themselves. They are able to hear the voice of their soul, which I think is a synonym for your intuition. And your intuition is that still quiet voice that can only be heard when the other louder, more screaming voices, like the voice of your emotion and the voice of your thoughts, the more deliberate planning, executive function, orchestrated part of your brain temporarily ceases. So I think, as we're talking about being in flow, connecting to nature, doing things that connect you to your divinity, it's really figuring out how to be more in flow and how to connect more to that timeless reality, which we all need to transcend some of the existential difficulties of our world sometimes.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, is nature like the ultimate flow state? Like I feel like
Love that question. Yes, love that.
yes. So, one of the things you talked about at the beginning was searching, and like that you were searching kind of externally, but found a lot internally as you discovered different experiences and religions and spiritual practices. When we talk about searching, I see that a lot in like the health and wellness landscape right now, as well as everyone's searching kind of externally, or a lot of people are. How do you bring that in, and what's kind of the importance, I guess, of that internal fulfillment?
Absolutely. It's such an interesting thing because I have a lot of clients and patients right now who are all searching. People come to me all the time searching. We're all searching, right, for something. And it's a really interesting thing how to balance that, because there are some people who've done so much inner work, but feel still very, very stuck. And of course, then you can think about different kinds of inner work and more somatic work and more meditation, or sometimes you need to go out and do something in the outside world to actually change your external circumstance, and the two are so combined. I joke, once in a blue moon, I'll advocate for someone a geographic cure. You need to get out of where you're at and just go somewhere different. It's very
Yes.
rare, but I do that. But lately, I've had some people for whom that's coming through me, that I think we need just to change your circumstances. You've been working so hard. You've been doing everything internally. You've been doing a lot of things externally as well, but in the same space. We need some new people, some new life, some new nature. And, so I think for everybody, it's about figuring out what that right balance is. And it's about not shirking away from one or the other and seeing what's being called and being asked of you. And if you feel stuck in one way, if you've done all the internal work, or you're doing so much internal work, but you feel stuck, go on a retreat somewhere, meet new people, be in a different environment, maybe even move. If you've been doing that, if you've been kind of in so much flow externally, that it's hard for you to stop and do the inner work, then do the inner work precisely because it's difficult. So I think the two have to go together. Something, and it's harder for people to do the inner work. We like to search externally. We like to find our source of happiness outside of ourselves in all these things that could be like our psychological addictions, money, status, power, achievement, love, all those things. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad things. We're human beings and we live in a society where those things are prized and feel good to have. But what we don't want is to be privy to psychological addictions. And that happens when, for any of those things, when the more of them we have, the emptier we begin to feel. So if that's happening, then you're like, okay, got to do some inner work on something a little different, got to unearth some of these behaviors and addictions and start to see my world anew.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. And I think that piece of looking where you don't necessarily want to look or going to the areas that are harder, we tend to shy away from. And so being able to spend that time and do that work makes a lot of sense. And that balance between the external and internal searching, knowing that so much is within as well. So, a message from our sponsor. Farming for Health is brought to you by Farmer Jones Farm at the Chef's Garden. Farmer Jones Farm provides nutritious, regeneratively grown vegetables to home cooks nationwide. If you are searching for vegetables grown in a way that's healthy for you and good for the planet, try a curated box from Farmer Jones Farm. Get 15% off your order with the code FarmingForHealth15. All right, so as far as living your purpose, I know that's something you talk about is finding your purpose, living your purpose. I think that's something a lot of people are searching for, right? And so how do you begin to not only find your purpose, but then live your purpose?
I love that. Yeah. And I think, living your purpose is a combination of two things, I think, right? One is understanding what your soul's contribution is meant to be and the contribution you want to make to the world based on your unique set of talents, experiences, interests, background, etc. That's the first part. And the second part is this thing that I refer to as a soul correction, which is a term taken from Kabbalah when I used to study Kabbalah. And your soul correction is that thing that keeps coming up in your life again and again and again, often much to your chagrin and dismay, and despite your best efforts to change it. It's what Sigmund Freud referred to as a repetition compulsion, or like those things that are most difficult, those unconscious patterns that we keep attracting into our life. We're like, why is this happening? And it keeps coming back. And so your sole purpose is first knowing what your contribution is, which for many people is a really difficult question. What am I supposed to be doing in this world? And it could be anything. It could be being a mother, it could be being a healer, it could be being a farmer, it could be being a writer, it could be being a million other things. That's your unique contribution and feels really aligned in your heart to what you're supposed to be doing. And knowing what is my soul correction? Like, what are those pain points in me that keep coming up? And what do I do about them? Like, the sole purpose is being able to like have an awareness of and living both, overcoming the pain and learning how to move past that, and also being of service to the world in some way through whatever contribution you're meant to make.
That's beautiful. So our podcast is called Farming for Health. What does Farming for Health mean to you?
Yeah. And I love that I'm on your podcast now because,
Yeah.
like, like I've been more in this mental health and spirituality movement, right? But by virtue of doing something that's outside the traditional bounds of psychiatry, I have so many people looking for more holistic, in general, more holistic psychiatric options to their health and their mental health. And so through that, I become dear friends with nutritional psychiatrist Dr. Uma Naidu at Harvard, Dr. Drew Ramsey at Columbia. They're amazing. And Candice Kumai, who's the one who connected me to you.
Yes.
Yes, who's like this incredible author and speaker and like change maker. And to me, farming for health is the baseline or like the foundational element of how we can be fully human and fully healthy. It's one of the paths. It's one of the vital paths. So right now I'm in the process of starting a center at Yale, which is bridging mental health and spirituality. My bigger vision for that center down the road is actually, hopefully, given that, if I get permission from Yale, is to create a center that changes the way that we think about mental health. Because right now, mental health is thought of as two primary things: therapy and psychopharmacology, right? And all kinds of therapy and all kinds of psychopharmacology. And having been in this model for many years, it's very effective for certain people, but it also has its limitations, very significant limitations. One being that as a medical student at Yale, I got two nutrition classes, two, count them, not a lot, right? And if food is the fundamental thing that we're taking into our bodies every day. How can that not impact your body and your mental health? Right. So, my vision for the center, I hope to one day start at Yale, is the Yale Mind, Body, Spirit Institute. Mind, body, and spirit all having a certain, focus. Spirit is what I'm doing right now, bridging mental health and spirituality. And Yale's on board with it, which is so wonderful. And I'm so excited about that. Mind is sort of how we see psychiatry already, psychopharmacology, therapy, adding also, I'd like to positive psychology, a really strong, amazing movement, not just being able to remove the darkness, but also bring in the light, like positive habits of gratitude, of self love, of forgiveness, self compassion, to be able to see the world more holistically. And there's so much evidence for that being really amazing for mental health. The body part is going to be nutritional psychiatry, which is where the farming for health comes in, healthy sexuality and pleasure, longevity and fertility, exercise psychology, those things that often are overlooked in the tradition Western medicine movement within psychiatry. And so for me, personally, farming for health, it's something I've gotten more and more into over time, just by virtue of life and, my own journey. One of the things is I come from a family with high cholesterol and genetically high cholesterol. No one's overweight, but everyone has high cholesterol. So it's one of those things, a little tricky. You're like, should I do anything about it? It doesn't seem like it, but no, you should definitely. And my cholesterol was like not long ago, um, something like 240, and my LDL was like 140, both high values. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some fasting, some juice fasting. And I did that. And within 2 weeks, it was returned to normal. And to me, that was just like I didn't do a 2 week juice fast. I did maybe a few day juice fast. And then I ate a lot of vegetables and I just completely cut out the red meat and saturated fats. And 2 weeks, that's how quickly my cholesterol returned to normal. It was shocking to me. I was like, that just like boggled my mind that the body is so resilient, and something that I thought was like, oh my God, this is this chronic thing. No, it's a completely habit based thing based on my habits that I could in a second change. I'm not saying everyone's going to have this effect. This was my effect, and
Right.
yeah, with juicing and with vegetables. And so I'm trying to do more and more of that in all aspects of my life. I try to be primarily plant based. I do eat fish at times. Once in a blue moon, I will have some red meat, but once in a blue moon. And I just think no processed foods, or to a degree that we can. And also like this movement, like a detox movement, right? Because we take in so many toxins from our environment at all times, through the processed foods, through the plastics, through all the sulfates and shampoo, and like through a million different things, chemicals that are important, for certain products to be the products that they are, but can have, and different people are affected to different degrees. And so this idea of even detoxing with occasional saunas, people are doing, cold plunges with the longevity movement for hormesis, which is a slight stress that's put on the body that actually, in the long run, creates an effect that's really positive and powerful for the body. And even practices like grounding, putting your 2 feet on the ground, like connecting to the earth. These are beautiful things. These are very much part of my life. And it's also, when you tell your patients, do a little bit of grounding, no one's going to say that's crazy. They might say that, but most likely people are going to try it. And like different people are affected by this to different degrees as well. And also different people are open to it to different degrees. So I think with everything, whatever treatments you're offering, farming for health, psychiatry, etc., it's about understanding the person and meeting them where they're at. And I think that's the key. And the more that you do that, the more that you're able to help people expand the boundaries of what they're open to, and what steps they can take for their own healing.
Oh, what a great answer. Yes, absolutely. And when you brought up detoxification, obviously there's physical detoxification. As far as emotional detoxification goes, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like the two often go together, because I also feel that the mind, body, and spirit are so connected, right? And sometimes, in a way, like cleansing our body also helps to cleanse our spirit. And it's difficult to be fully mentally healthy if if our bodies aren't if we're feeling off in our body. So I feel in general the two are very connected. And emotional detox is a huge thing. And emotional detox is, the way that I see it, allowing yourself to have the releases that you need, the releases that your body is asking for and that you want, which could be for certain people just crying, or it could be screaming, or it could be creating, or it could be writing, or creating this space to release those things that could in any way be bogging you down or holding you back. And there's many, many different practices, including physical practices, even like, acupuncture, right, can for certain people unleash certain emotions. So to really be able to be connected to your body and do what your body needs to also free yourself emotionally.
Yeah. And if someone finds themselves excuse me, if someone finds themselves really searching externally, internally, what are maybe like one or two top practices you found maybe the most benefit from to start with?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like connecting to your soul is the most important thing. And to do that, you ask yourself the simple question, what do I most deeply want? And you start, you might not have an answer, but you start asking that question and giving yourself time to really sit with it and seeing what comes up slowly and over time. What do I most deeply want? And see what comes up. And it could be a feeling, it could be an emotion, it could be an image, it could be something that you write down, but starting to meditate on that, because oftentimes we're living these lives of what we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do according to societal standards, according to our role in society as a woman, as a mother, as a friend, as a wife, as a husband, as a whatever, right? And then we forget to check in with ourselves. So I think that that is a huge, huge practice. And then the second practice, it's actually like almost the opposite, right? What do I most deeply want looks in. And if ever you're feeling overwhelmed, a very powerful way to shift that is to find a way to serve. Who needs my help right now? Who can I be of service to? Even that question and partaking in that action can shift a mindset of, being sad, victim mentality, feeling sorry for yourself to, you know what? I have the capacity to help somebody, and let's do that.
What a great answer. So, what is the one vegetable forward dish that you're most excited about right now? Whether you make it or you have it somewhere, what are you most excited about?
I love that. I love that. So I'm here staying with a dear friend of mine, and I went into his refrigerator yesterday, and I was like so happy because his refrigerator is like my refrigerator. There's like 80 million organic vegetables, all from like the nearby farmers market. I was like, oh my God, I've come home. And then there's quinoa. And so yesterday, and then he has all these spices. And so that was oh, and we did have put some eggs on top. So that was our dish yesterday. It was like all these amazing vegetables all together in a little stew with some quinoa and an egg on top. And then we put some goat cheese on it. And it was like, and then these amazing, like serrano pepper type, like, I don't even know what it was. That's my favorite vegetable forward dish is like going into someone's
Yum.
fridge, putting together a mishmash of whatever they have, putting a little cheese and an egg on top, and boom.
I love that. That's the diversity, right? I talk all the time about
Totally.
like eating the rainbow and how important diversity is, but being able to eat what's in season and what's in the refrigerator.
Totally.
What a
Totally.
great meal. That sounds so good. And oftentimes it's the company you're with as well that can make a meal extra
Exactly.
special.
Exactly. Hmm.
Good. Excuse me. Any last thoughts that you wanted to leave our audience with today?
No, I just so enjoyed connecting with you and with your audience. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. Where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, it's my website, annayusim.com, ANNAYUSIM.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Dr. Amy.
Thank you for listening to Farming for Health. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Connect with Farmer Lee Jones and I on Instagram and Facebook.
The Chef's Garden is a family-owned regenerative farm that grows the most flavorful and nutritious vegetables, herbs, and microgreens for culinary professionals and home cooks. For over 30 years, the Chef's Garden has supplied some of the world's finest chefs and restaurants. Now, through Farmer Jones Farm, the same delicious ingredients are available to home cooks in the United States to use and enjoy, delivered directly to their homes. The Chef's Garden mission is to grow exceptional vegetables, care for each other and the land, and inspire a vegetable-forward future. For more information, visit chefs-garden.com.